A very good day, everyone. We very much appreciate a number of people joining us today. I see people joining us basically from all across the globe, so we're very happy with that. Now, I do have the pleasure to have today a session with Sunke Eggers. He's Head of Product Security Response and Patch QA at SAP. Sunke, I'll hand over to you in just half a minute, I would say. There are a few housekeeping topics to address. This session today is being recorded. We will distribute the recording shortly after having today's webinar. We also offer all the attendees today the option to ask questions. Now, there may be some of you that have access to a question panel. Feel free to use that during the discussion. In case you, for whatever reason, you would not see the question section, you may also have a chat option. Now, feel free to send your questions in using the chat option. Now, Sunken and I, we will try to answer all your questions during the session. If because of shortage in time, we may not be able to answer all questions. Either me or Sunke will get back to you with answers on your questions shortly after the actual webinar. So it is a true pleasure having so many participants. It's actually quite surprising how many people did register for today's event. And I'm actually very proud to have Sunke Eggers with me. Sunke, feel free to shortly introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ivan, for the starting words. So I have been at SAP for quite a few years, and I'm now heading the product security and patch, product security response and patch QA team, which is things like our monthly patch day, our responsible disclosure process, our bug bounty, but also a small sub-team that deals with cross company-wide product security initiatives. And in that function, we have been working on the topic that we're here to talk about today, which is the security configuration exposure of customer controllable security settings via an API. So what this means is that we have many solutions at SAP, and we're talking cloud solutions here primarily, that have a lot of different places where customers can configure something one way or another, for example, enable multi-factor authentication or not, or something like that. And of course, in the cloud world, this is less than in the on-premise world, because clearly some settings are set by the vendor. However, there's still quite a bit, and it's also let's say, not necessarily done in a homogeneous way across the products. Within the product, it's all there. There's some settings, some place where you can change it, some documentation on it. And what we said, we wanted to make this a little bit more homogeneous by having a central place where we document these settings, at least the most important ones for the bigger products. And B, where we want to then not just have paperwork, but also expose it so that somebody, a customer, a partner, or anybody who's interested and has a license can actually read the value of the setting if multi-factor authentication, for instance, is switched on or off in their system, and whether or not this is considered to be a secure or not so secure setting. And so this is the part that we have done at SAP, and the part where SecurityBridge, of course, comes into picture. They have read our API, they are including it in their platform, and in the second part of the presentation, Ivan will demo how this is done. So first, I'll talk a little bit about the strategy, but I'll keep it brief because I think you're not necessarily interested in what we do in great detail. Then I will explain the solution from an SAP perspective, and then I hand over to Ivan. So here, I think there is a shift in the industry anyway. For a long time, we looked at application security as just like how to do secure coding, how to, I don't know, do input validation, for example. However, in the modern world, in the cloud, you also need state-of-the-art operations security. And this includes the things on the right-hand side, for example, compliance capabilities like this one, or consistent security experience across services by just unifying the way one can read these security parameters that a customer can influence. Now, over to the next slide, please. And in fact, we'll skip that because it's easier to talk about it on the next slide. So one more, please. So while the screen is building up or whatever is missing here, there should be some nice icons. But anyway, we'll just work as it is because the words speak for themselves. So we have, let's say, 3 pillars on the left-hand side. One is the, I would call it bread and butter thing of security, which is a set of standards that need to be enforced, processes that help with it, validation that takes place before we ship something, and also testing measures afterwards, like pen testing or bug bounty. Then we are investing into some scanning solutions or threat modeling to do them, let's say, earlier on in the development lifecycle, or automate them a little bit to make sure that our secure development operations lifecycle at SAP is actually very efficient, and we catch the bugs as early as possible, because as we all know, catching bugs too late in the game, it gets very costly. And of course, the bit where we are talking about today is not this bread and butter business of building a secure system. It is about the security experience for the consumer, for the customer. And here on the left-hand side at the top, you see the APIs. And again, the idea here is we as a vendor also have a responsibility not just to throw some configuration settings across the fence at random different places for different solutions, and it's difficult for consumers to find them. We also believe that we can make it more seamless, more easy to consume by having one format, one API, and this is what we've set out to do with the configuration settings like multi-factor authentication that are under control of the customer. Over to the next slide, please.
Yeah, so again, I think we do have a kind of bit of a bug in the software that we're currently using. But I do see that some of the content of your slide is automatically being filtered out. So, but I'm quite sure that you know exactly what you talk about.
Okay, so in the background, quietly, while people are waiting for me, I will just get my slide as a background. So that is really strange, because during the dry run, this stuff was visible.
Exactly.
No
That's
idea
exactly
what
Murphy's
is
law, right?
Murphy's law. So give me 1 second. So basically what we've done here during the configuration monitoring of our SAP solutions, we set out to say, okay, we've got these, I don't know, 10 or 15 major cloud products like SAP S/4HANA, Concur, or Ariba solutions, SuccessFactors, or the HR suite. So we basically said all these different things, they have these security settings which customers have to configure. So what we went ahead and did is we basically would it help if I tried to share my screen? I'm just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do so.
I mean, because that is a thing that may help, because it just offers me to share my screen. So show my screen. Nothing is coming up.
But we can see your screen.
Very good. I just go into presenter mode because the rest you probably don't want to see. And I saw briefly on the preview that you can actually see stuff. Can you see things on there?
Exactly. No, I think we can all see exactly what we need to see here. Thank you.
Perfect. So really strange, because last time during the dry run it worked. So what I was saying is that we have these different solutions, and they all have something that can be configured by the customers. Some solutions, of course, more, some solutions less. But what we did say is that this is all documented somewhere. There are always places where you can access it. However, we said we want to have one common format for the how to do the most important configuration, how to document the most important configuration settings, and these are the security recommendations. So around about 2 years ago or so, when we started with this activity, we went to all the major products and said, hey guys, what things do you have that can be configured by customers with respect to security in your solution? Please document them in a table-like format. So on the next screen, you will actually see a screenshot of that. And please fill in the fields, filtering capabilities, and so on, and do the paperwork to document these recommendations in our help portal. And this, of course, was an important step because it got people thinking, because initially everybody had done their own thing, and now we were prescribing a format. We went through some iterations, and with that, we actually then moved on and started harmonizing the way we describe these things. And of course, you could say that, well, it's nice to have this documented on paper or rather in a help portal. But what you really need is you need to use it electronically. And this is part 2 of the picture here. We basically then started with our business technology platform as a pilot to send the data across to the CALM EFRAN backend data lake, and then from there to expose it via a public API for public consumption. And of course, what you then also need is you need some sort of visualization. And so what can happen here is that everyone pulls these parameters from the API and visualizes them in some sort of dashboard. The solutions that we have are briefly shown here. But the one that is more comprehensive that we're talking about is, of course, the SecurityBridge platform that Ivan will demo in a few minutes. And of course, I just mentioned now SecurityBridge. They came on board some time ago when we first went public with these plans. And basically, we started chatting and said, okay, guys, we are doing these security recommendations. Once we have them exposed via an API, would you be interested to try this out? And then the story went on from there. Once we had the beta version of our API, they tested it out. We gave us feedback. We corrected some bugs or made things more smooth. And of course, as you can imagine, when you develop this for the first time, there are some glitches in it. And but now we see data coming through the API for the first BTP services, and we also see them displayed in the SecurityBridge platform integrated into their product. And moving on to the next slide, please. Oh, it's me. I can't ask you to move.
I was about to say something. I love what we do.
I have to move on myself. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, so just to give you a feeling and maybe another example what's in these security recommendations, here you see on our Trust Center publicly available a list of the most important security recommendations for the key products. And on the right-hand side, you see an example for BTP. And I mentioned we have a table-like format. It can be filtered and it has several columns. This is only showing some of them. But for example, the first column tells you this is the BTP service like identity authentication. At the bottom, you see sub-destination service. And of course, we also have a priority column that would help you to identify, hey, this is a critical one, or the recommendations are maybe the one that you do in the second round. We also group them, jumping a little bit to the right to the topic. We group them by the topic strong authentication in this case. So you can see that the filter here is set for strong authentication. And then, of course, this feature enables us to maybe see similar recommendations across different BTP services. And then, of course, there's a description what the default setting or behavior is, as well as a recommendation how it should be set. In the first line, it says default authentication method for the administration console is username and password. And the a recommendation here is that actually it's more secure if you use two-factor authentication. And then to the right, you see some more information because, of course, this is just a couple of lines and maybe not sufficient. Moving on to the next slide. So I've learned that I have to do it myself. I would like to show you some glimpse from our work from maybe, I don't know, sometime end of last year when we put this down into an Excel and said, well, we're talking about an API that exposes this configuration data to the public. So what would it look like? What would be in the API? So this is kind of a screenshot of our thinking at that time. And so just to go as an example for the second line in this screenshot, We have the question if I want to enable or disable social sign-on of end users, that is, log in with your Facebook credentials, for example. Now, typically in a business scenario with in the ERP context, this is not desired. However, it could be that if we have a customer-facing scenario, that it might be exceptionally allowed for specific scenarios where the customers can interact with the system. And so the recommendation here is keep it disabled in general, but actively manage use cases that require this particular function. And then on the right-hand side, just illustrating what the payload could look like, we have, of course, the name of the recommendation, which is sign on. We have the value that is currently set in the system and would then be returned by the API. We have the index, which of course allows this thing to be identified and cross-checked against these documented recommendation lists, as well as further in the SecurityBridge platform. I believe I also saw it, if I'm not completely wrong. And then a status whether or not this is compliant. The lower one is compliant. The other one, I don't want to read through it as an example, but here we have an example which would be non-compliant. So this is what we built then at the beginning of the year, give or take a couple of months, for the first BTP services. And this is also the time when we intensified the collaboration with you guys from SecurityBridge, where we sent the first data across that you try to configure it so that it works. And so there was a constant feedback loop during our collaboration here, and we found some bugs. But before I now talk more myself, I would like to hand over to Ivan to actually show you what it looks like from the SecurityBridge platform perspective. In which case, yes, I would unshare and you demo, or you take over anyway.
I think we probably have the necessary people that actually give us those rights. So I see all of the things moving here on my screen. So let me see if we can actually do a smooth shift. And if all goes well, people should now be seeing a Fiori Launchpad. Now, Sunga, before we go into running through an actual short demo, I have to say we do praise, and I think I do speak for the entire community, not just SecurityBridge, but the entire SAP community, because in the past, it was unbelievably difficult to get into security recommendations, and in all honesty, I think there is a bit of a zoo of SAP applications on the market today. And every few weeks, new things pop up. So it's extremely difficult to really always stay up to date on what are exactly those recommendations for SAP or from SAP to secure the software. And I think that your team has been doing a brilliant job. I know it has been a very challenging task in order to convince all the different stakeholders to apply the same methodology. But having the SAP Trust Center now in place, it's a go-to portal. If you want to know how you do things, you go to that portal. It is always there. It's always reliable. Now, the fact that you now even took it a step further and introduced an API, it does allow vendors like ourselves to very consistently and very rapidly consume new applications, new services that are being deployed on BTP. Now, clearly for us, BTP cloud security is only one single element. I think we still have a number of people also on the call here today that will run a number of on-premise systems, that run a number of cloud-hosted systems. And let's not forget, we also still have that wide range of SAP products that are more technical in nature, like Cloud Connector or Web Dispatcher or SAP Router. So all by all, I think the SAP technology stack is very, very vast, which even makes it more challenging. Now, the screen that you see in front of you, it is SecurityBridge, and I don't want to go into an actual product demo. That's not the target of today's call, but I would like to quickly explain of what SecurityBridge actually is, because this is where we focus on providing a platform for organizations to build an SAP security program, and hardening your cloud settings is absolutely one of those core elements. Now, if we look at the Launchpad, there are four main capabilities that we typically cover, and that is event monitoring, so threat detection. And we do that for both on-prem, cloud-hosted, native SaaS. And then we have the component security and compliance. And it's exactly this module. This is where we have that integration with the Cloud API. And now we're going to go I'll probably try to reuse the same example as you have called up, that logging in with a social media account. Third capability, patching. Now for BTP, not relevant really. There is not much to patch on BTP. That's exactly what SAP does for us. And then the last element is code security. Now, depending, yes, you do have ABAP on BTP as well, ABAP, at least for the cloud-hosted environments, a bit less relevant. Now, when we look at this application, Security and Compliance Monitor, now you're going to see, and you see, you know, we specifically mounted up a short demo environment, so none of it is actually real, so it's all demo systems. And I did ask my team to actually open up, and we can see that here. So we have a Cloud Identity Services application running. This actually is running on BTP. Within Cloud Identity Services, we have a number of applications installed. And going back to the example, Suki, that you just had with that social logon, if we have a look at this authentication test example, if we click on security somewhere, now I'm a bit lost here, so let me click here, application and resources, single sign-on, no, hold on, let me close this again. If we scroll here, there is authentication and access. You see social sign-on is active. And you were just mentioning, you know, if this is now an application that has a true backend purpose, that's something you probably don't want to have people logging on using the Facebook account. You know, imagine that Facebook gets breached, then you would have a massive issue with your backend. So we can all imagine, you know, the SAP recommendation would be to switch this off. Now, if we translate that back to SecurityBridge, I'm going to show you two different things. The first thing what we've done is, in the monitor, we've introduced a new tool, which is called here Cloud ALM. Now, technically, we have the capability to connect to multiple Cloud ALM instances. Now, how to connect to a Cloud ALM, I think, you know, let's not cover that. It's quite straightforward. We just need some authentication. We need an endpoint, and that's it. From here onwards, you can do a query on exactly all of those parameters which are exposed by the SAP API. And so it's just a very handy interface to en masse query the SAP standard API. So for instance, if we do a quick search here and we type in social, and then we would exactly see the controls that you just mentioned. And I think, by the way, this is the application that we just seen in the other session here. It says non-compliant. It is not matching the SAP recommended value. Now, Suki, you also mentioned that for some customers or for some use cases, this parameter may be incompliant. Maybe that's okay. You know, if you expose a portal that has non-critical data and you want to have an easy access for end users, maybe you do allow this social media logon, and for other ones, clearly not. And so you may have to work with different baselines. And that's exactly one of those added values that we believe SecurityBridge provides, because if we go back into the overview, we will be able to see all the systems that we have running in our demo lab. And, you know, we can see there's BTP systems running, there's an ABAP system, there's a HANA database, SuccessFactors is running here, and, you know, maybe probably also a number of ABAP systems. Now, the example that we had here with this Cloud Identity Services, we can see we have a number of controls. Now, again, if you would be a customer to SecurityBridge, you will see way more controls. So we just deliberately only selected a number of controls here for the easiness of the demo. And if we click on this first control here, it says Cloud Identity Services Settings, exactly dedicated controls to our Cloud Identity Service running on BTP. Now, we directly also see the baseline. Now, a baseline describes which controls are to be executed. A baseline also describes what is the recommended value for the systems assigned to this baseline. So it's perfectly possible to either enforce multiple baselines on the same system, or you can apply a single baseline to a range of systems. So this way you can have a recommended value being very specific to your organization or to a set of systems in the organization. As soon as you click on it, you get to see underlying use cases. And these use cases basically almost one-on-one correlate to the use cases that also are described within the SAP Trust Center, within the individual controls. And I take the second one here. It says social sign-on of applications. Now, apparently this instance runs 8 applications where 2 of them have social sign-on active, which is not recommended. We click on it, and very quickly you can see indeed this authentication test, which you would also see here in the actual application. Social sign-on is active. We go into the dashboard. Indeed, it is active. And so it's just a very quick means to validating your systems now, whether they run on BTP, because the integration with the API is only at the moment only focused on cloud security, cloud hardening, cloud configuration. But exactly the same methodology we have applied to the HANA database, to on-premise ABAP NetWeaver systems, the Java NetWeaver stack, etc. Now, whenever you have a finding, it is possible to either you accept risk. If you go into the process of risk acceptance, you would have to start documenting why you want to deviate from a certain security recommendation, because deviations are always possible. Or you could say, I want to have this addressed. I want to speak to my admins. I create an incident. And then we again integrate within an incident management solution. So SecurityBridge builds that, step-by-step approach to not only make it visible to end consumers where they have security flaws in the setup, but I think more importantly is we help you to address those topics and step-by-step make your systems, bring them more in line with the SAP recommendations. Now, for every single control, of course, you can always go back to the SAP Trust Center. You will find, perfectly well explaining example on how to remediate things. Within SecurityBridge, you will always have a direct index to these individual index numbers. Now, I know, Sunke, we are all very technical, but initially, that's a bit of experience that, I take back from my team that has been implementing all of this. It's sometimes kind of funny to work with these numbers. It keeps us having a very techie feeling. Now, there's a button, always knowledge base. If we click on the button, this is also where SecurityBridge brings in the additional information on. You may not always know how to correctly configure things. So SecurityBridge has a very open knowledge base, that we share with partners, that we share with customers, that will help us to indicate on how exactly do you do this configuration and what is the true risk that goes with it. Now, this is now an easy example. We have many more controls that are requiring a more detailed explanation. So this is now clearly a very clear example and an easy example. So we have been able to very quickly query Cloud ALM, because as soon as SAP would introduce now a new control, a new service, a new application with a new set of recommendations, without a single line of code update, we can now instantly make sure that customers have the mechanism in place to also apply these controls to the best possible extent. That was a major improvement for us as a vendor, because in the past we always had to do a bit of reverse engineering. We had to find out which APIs, which OData services to call, and now SAP made it a lot more easy and consumable from a third-party vendor like ourselves. Good. Now, all of these controls eventually build up to means to increase your security posture, because the controls that we have, they not only deal with configuration, they also deal with code security, with patching, with every element that sometimes one-on-one corresponds to an attack vector. If you would start following a roadmap, and maybe we can do a quick roadmap. Imagine we want to secure this particular BTP system. So, and I think it's the first system here, this Cloud Identity Service. Keep in mind, we've only configured a very few controls here, but if I would now build me a roadmap, it would instantly show me which of the insecure configurations I would need to fix first, because we always look at what is the exploitation risk, and we combine that with what is the effort for you to remediate this. And you really have a working list, and you can do that for a single system, or you can do it for your entire BTP landscape. But because what we do see is that a lot of people are actually using BTP. The adoption rate that we see as a third-party vendor is actually quite enormous. But there's also the risk that applications pop up and then you again lose the control over the environment. So that's also some of the feedback that we've seen from customers. Now, therefore, it's a very powerful and a very quick and an efficient means to keep control. You follow your roadmap. Now, the last thing I may want to show is, because Sunke also mentioned something about a dashboard, is if I go back into my Fiori Launchpad, on the very top, I have a management dashboard. Now, it is the management dashboard that is combining information from the different data sources that we've built up. And also here, the SAP Cloud ALM API has been used because the Cloud ALM API helps us to measure the overall security rating based upon the area of responsibility. So the examples that we've seen, I think they must be classified on the SAP basis, and it immediately helps us to measure how secure our systems monitored, always looking at who is eventually responsible to keep that setting up to date. Now, what you here see, this is a security dashboard that is looking at the top 5 impact issues, low-hanging fruits, interface security, all of the different attack vectors that you have within SAP can be configured on such a dashboard. And as you see, you can switch between dashboards. You can even share dashboards with colleagues. You can, internally publish them on a portal. Now, we just provided all the means. So what SAP has done with exposing the means to validate, now we took up that input in order to convert that into a very readable output to make it visible, not to you only internally within your security team, but also to your top management, that security is being taken care of. So, Sunke, with that said, that was a very, very quick and a short introduction into how we have consumed your API that your team has been building in making it really accessible to our joint customers. Now, Sunke, I've got a question for you while we wait for more questions to come in. Now, how many BTP services are being covered through that security API to date?
It is currently 5 services, important ones like identity and authentication, for example, or IPS. And the plan for BTP is that we add more services. However, I'll also be honest with you, there are some BTP services which currently do not have own settings that are, let's say, really under their control, but rather they rely on identity and authentication. So we are working on making a holistic picture here and also going beyond BTP. So that is maybe something on the timeline. We presented the first results to the public at the German User Group Conference in February or March this year, where we saw the data coming through to the API, just from the SAP perspective. And since then, we started looking at other applications. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on under the hood. It's not as straightforward as, oh yeah, there is a security configuration recommendation with a value X or Y, and immediately it is in the Calm data lake. So there is quite a bit of work under the hood. So we started that with several of our bigger products, and over the course of the next months and the year, more and more things also from beyond BTP will be exposed via this API. So it takes time, so bear with us a little bit. But eventually, as Ivan was saying, the good thing, the big advantage for customers or partner companies like you is to be able to actually have the data without a single line of code once we publish something.
Fantastic. I'm actually quite happy to hear that. Now, a question that pops up in here is as well, is Cloud ALM required in order for us to access the API?
Yeah, everybody who has a cloud license should have also a Cloud ALM access, but yes, you need Cloud ALM.
Okay. Good. Quickly running here through the questions here. What is the timeline on making it more official in adding more products? I know you probably can't commit to that.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I can't commit to that because, of course, there's always a technical challenge behind it, or sometimes also political challenges that certain things take longer than we initially anticipate. However, we've started the first thing first that needs to happen, and that is also something we need to analyze with the respective product. which ones of these security recommendations are really hard security recommendations that have a black and white value that can be easily coded. Some of them may be more generic recommendations that cannot actually be set with a parameter or so. So these are more like handy hints. And once this is happening, then the technical discussion between the relevant application experts and the Cloud ALM backend team starts. Are they already integrated into Cloud ALM or not? If they're already integrated into Cloud ALM, it is easier because they already know how to ship data across to Cloud ALM. If not, there's quite a bit of work to do. So we have different phases for different solutions. And unfortunately, I cannot let the cat out of the hat, also to say, or to say which one comes next, but something will come soon.
Okay. You know, it's good that you just say, you know, I can't yet say which one is going to come next, because if I go through the questions, you know, probably 80% of what I read is, you know, when is Ariba coming? Is success factors covered? Do you have a roadmap available? So, you know, it is definitely a repeating pattern. So I'm not going to read them out too loud to you. So we understand it is complicated. It will take time. Good. I may have another question here that pops up in my screen. If I would have an SAP S4 in the cloud and one on-prem, the cloud one I can access over Cloud ALM, probably directly. That's what I assume that's what's meant here, or through the API. And the one that I run natively, I do have SecurityBridge installed. How would both results differ if configuration and flows are consistent to both systems? Now, I don't think that's a very consistent question, or it's me just reading it wrong. But I think maybe that's something I can answer. If you have a system running, whether it's running on-prem, cloud hosted, or something runs native on BTP, what I've always enforced with my architecture team that works in the background is, you know, everything needs to work identical and everything needs to work consistent. So eventually it does not really matter whether you run a system self-hosted or cloud hosted. The feedback that you get within SecurityBridge, it feels the same. Even if you would have a technical component like a web dispatcher that does not even have a Cloud ALM integration yet, the values that you see will be identical, independent upon whether you look directly on the system or whether you look within SecurityBridge. The API that we have is also queried in real time, whereby the last value that we receive is being stored. And so if you would modify something within the BTP platform, you know, you change the social media parameter that we've just seen to you disable it, you would run a refresh on the control. It would instantly say that you're again compliant instead of non-compliant. And so we do try to enforce a consistency. There is no need to run batch jobs or whatsoever, so everything is done in real time. Good. Now questions keep on popping in. How will ALM services will be licensed in SecurityBridge, like additional productive licenses, or will there be automatically with the BTP license? That's a very good question, actually, and that's, you know, I'm not sales. My role is CTO, so luckily I'm only limited to the technical capabilities of the platform. So that will have to be a question that I will route to the sales team, and they will definitely also provide a good response to it. My assumption is if you got a license for BTP, it will automatically be covered. Now, Suke, that may be also a bit of a nasty question to you. Maybe you can answer that. Is Cloud ALM, is the use of that service free of charge?
To the best of my knowledge, the basic version, yes. But okay. I don't want to say anything wrong.
No, understand.
So don't quote me on that.
I run with the same disclaimer as you, so I fully understand. Good. Now, the one managing my chat queue, apparently they have been doing a fantastic job in, you know, removing duplicacy in questions, because I see an enormous amount of questions. There's only a few ones that are being submitted to Sunke and myself. Sunke, is there anything else that you take away from our short conversation today that you would like to convey to the security audience still?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd like to really convey the message that we all have to work together on making our IT systems more secure. That means the vendor has to provide the capabilities, customers have to use these capabilities, query the API, in the case here, partners have to use it, and clearly there is a full-blown SecurityBridge platform. There are capabilities in there that would take us as SAP to build quite a lot of time. That's why we are building this partnership. That's why we're working together to, at the end of the day, use our strengths. Each one of us is doing one bit to, at the end of the day, make our systems more secure for everyone, because of course nobody wants to have insecure settings or might want to breach or anything like that. And you know, out in the world, it's getting tougher every day. You read every day what's going on. So we will keep at it. We will keep working together with you, for example, with SecurityBridge, to really provide very, very good basic capabilities and to always stay a little bit ahead of the nasty people, I would call them.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe Sönke, also on that last comment when you said, you know, that partnership, there's also a way we can truly say it is a true partnership, because, you know, if I go back to my development team in the back end, and they've had the experience to firsthand, you know, pilot an API from SAP, and I have to say in the beginning it was not that easy, and we've had a few bottlenecks and a few struggles. And we also connect both our teams, and I have to say the response and the efficiency on issues being resolved is just amazing. So you know, I can truly say it has been true partnership. Now, very similar to, you know, we also get feedback from customers once in a while that mention that, you know, the complexity of some of these parameters, that the documentation is up to the mark. This is also where we as a vendor, you know, we need to listen. And I think only by combining SAP, partners, and eventually also end customers, if all three parties actually work together, I'm quite convinced SAP Security can make massive leaps forward, and we can make a lot of systems way more secure than they are today. So, okay, on that note, from my side, a big thank you for helping with organizing today's session. Everyone within the call, you know, we did try to stay under 45 minutes. Our marketing team was very consistent on that. So, you know, I think I do make them happy. I do stay within the timing. I still see questions coming in. And what we will do is we will go through those questions and we will have them answered shortly after. Also, the recording of today's session, we will be very happy to share this so that we grow the community on using your API. So thanks all for joining and have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot as well from me.